politics, sport? Do these things even go together? But actually, at the heart of it, it's supporting local people to bring about the positive change they want to see for their families, their communities, and ultimately a happier, healthier, more connected society. Volunteering is an incredibly powerful force. And actually, when you combine that with what sport and physical activity can do, that's where you unlock the magic.
Hi there, and welcome to Season 3 of the Engaged Volunteer Podcast, where we bring together volunteers and leaders in volunteer management to share their incredible experiences and journeys at their respective organisations. For this season, we've got some great guests lined up, and as you may have already picked up, a new co-host. My name's Phil Bomiter, Head of Sales for Europe at Rostify, and I'm really excited to be joining the Engage Volunteer podcast team alongside Shannon to highlight the incredible work of our volunteer managers worldwide. For the first episode of the new season, we're thrilled to be joined by Jenny Betteridge, Strategic Lead for Volunteering at Sport England, and Shruti Saujani, City Programme and Volunteer Manager at the England and Wales Cricket Board, otherwise known as the ECB. With over 10 million people in the UK choosing to volunteer their time through sport and physical activity last year, this episode of the podcast sees us dive a little deeper into the physical, mental, and social benefits of connected communities. We take a closer look at an inspiring volunteer-led project, Dream Big Desi Women, which was created for enthusiastic and passionate individuals who wanted to make a difference in their community on and off the field through cricket. Jenny and Shruti highlight the importance of creating programs that are accessible regardless of gender, levels of resources or technology, as well as discussing the significance of a robust volunteer feedback loop, which helps to shape and evolve these programs to become better for all involved. We also discuss the impact of the last 12 to 18 months on volunteering and physical activity, as well as how changes in thinking around connection and personal development through technology is being shared and implemented across sports all over the UK. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, then welcome. The Engage Volunteer Podcast aims to highlight the ways in which organisations and individuals are engaging their communities to connect them to the events and causes they are passionate about. The best way to support us is to click the follow button on whichever platform you're listening on to make sure you never miss an episode. We'd also love to get your feedback on the podcast and any suggestions you may have of guests you'd like to hear from. Please feel free to get in contact via our website or LinkedIn, and don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues about us too. Enjoy. Jenny, Shruti, great to speak to you. Great to have two giants of the volunteering sports scene here in the UK on my podcasting debut. So thank you very much for getting involved.
Thanks, Philip. Really excited to be here, especially with Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure.
Perfect. So I guess the first question to kind of set the scene is kind of what are your current roles? And I suppose maybe this might be a two-part question, but how have they maybe changed during the pandemic, specifically around obviously the volunteering side?
Yeah, I will jump in first on that one. So my name's Jenny Betteridge and I am Strategic Lead for Volunteering at Sport England. And Sport England is an arm's length government body which supports community sport and physical activity, helping us all lead healthier and happier lives. So we want everyone in the country to have the opportunity to feel the benefits that the life-changing impacts of sport and physical activity can bring. And if you kind of think that down to a community level, that could be Saturday morning Little League, it could be Tuesday night netball, it could be a group of friends getting together to go for a bike ride or do a bit of hula hooping or whatever. The vast majority of those activities are run by volunteers. So my role in normal times is working with partners who share our vision to help support even more people to give their time, and those who give their time have an amazing experience helping others get active. The last 18 months, I think, for everyone has been crazy. Sport England reacted quite quickly and moved into supporting emergency funding, supporting those in the sector who were facing incredible challenges. So since March 2020, we've made available £270 million of government and national lottery funding to support partners from the really big to the really tiny community groups who were trying to keep the lights on and keep themselves together, so that actually sport and physical activity continues for healthier people, but also happier. Mental health has come through strongly. So my work in this last 18 months has kind of pivoted quite a lot to kind of the immediate response. And now as we're hopefully, I'm touching wood everywhere, come out of it, it's around helping support volunteers and communities to return but also appreciating the opportunities perhaps to kind of shake things up and do things differently in the volunteering space.
Fantastic, and great initiative to get sport and volunteering, two subjects very close to my heart, together, and bringing people to kind of get more active on that front as well. Shruti, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. So I'm Shruti Saujani, the Senior Manager for the City Programme and Volunteers. And I'm going to say it's been an interesting 18 months. And for me, it's been a great experience because I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to actually feed into the wider volunteer strategy for the England and Wales Cricket Board, and also play a huge part in understanding and also meeting so many volunteers who make a difference to the game. We know that volunteers are the reason cricket happens, and the past 18 months has allowed me to learn so many stories that are on the ground and basically understanding how cricket can make the volunteering experience better. And I'm really excited, as Jenny's already touched on, as we exit out of this period, touching wood on my side as well, but as we go back to sports and this new way of working, I'm excited to put volunteers in cricket at the forefront of everything we do in every department. So a really exciting 6 to 12 months ahead. So watch this space.
Yeah, certainly. I think, the whole thing, I recently did my first volunteering stint down in London as part of the European Championships, and I can see how easy it is to catch the bug and get involved. And as you said, meet so many different people from different walks of life that you'd probably never meet in your normal day-to-day jobs. So certainly an amazing initiative. I'd just like you to maybe take it back a step and just maybe look at kind of how did you guys get into your roles, and where did it come from? Was it something you always wanted to do, or did you just kind of fall into it? Shruti, maybe we can start with you.
So working in sports was something that I always wanted to do, and Jenny's heard this story, but I had a vision board where I wrote that one day I want to change sports for women like me and women who look like me. And at the time, so that was about 9 years ago, I didn't feel or there was an opportunity for me in sports. However, fast forward 7 years ago, and I saw this opportunity where it showcased a partnership with Sport England and England and Wales Cricket Board to inspire 2,000 South Asian women to make a difference in their communities and volunteer. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is the role. And whether or not I can get a job from it, I want to be a volunteer and be a part of it, because it felt like a change. It felt like a movement. And there was just such a huge buzz around it. And I am a cricket nut. I absolutely love cricket as well. So like bringing my passion and making a difference together was like a dream come true. And I remember going through the interview process, and I remember not sleeping that whole like duration, because I was just like, oh my God, like I want this role. I think I had like, I was awake all night, just waiting for a response. But hey, it worked out. It was a good response. And I'm here today making that difference. So I think, yeah, it's been an incredible journey. And as we come into the program and we talk about, I guess, dreaming big, that's what I'd like to think I did over the past 9 years and what inspired me to be here today.
Absolutely. Such an inspirational way of thinking. I wish I was kind of that way inclined when I was younger, to have that vision and dream. But clearly, you set out to do something and achieve something amazing. So I think it's a brilliant story. Jenny, how about you? Was it kind of a similar approach to you?
It wasn't. My path brought me a little bit differently. So I actually started my career working in politics. I worked for the Labour Party for 13 years, everything from grassroots community campaigning right up through to national general election campaigns. And actually, when I then moved across to work for Sport England and Sport, actually it was a little bit self-sense of politics, sport, do these things even go together? But actually, at the heart of it, it's supporting local people to bring about the positive change they want to see for their families, their communities, and ultimately a happier, healthier, more connected society. Volunteering is an incredibly powerful force. And actually, when you combine that with what sport and physical activity can do, that's where you unlock the magic. So in that sense, I almost feel as though my path was as destined as Shruti's, in a sense of I love working to help people bring about that positive change. And we can do that through loads of people coming together, loads of different ideas, and really importantly, shining a light, which is what the ECB, the England Cricket Board, have done, shining a light around who actually isn't in the room, who's not yet enjoying and benefiting from the magic of, in this case, cricket, and actually then identifying it and then genuinely working in a way that really engages those communities and those individuals and brings people like Shruti through and her leadership and her vision. So that actually, when Sport England, we were really honoured to help be kind of the startup partners in the Dream Big programme. We invested £1.2 million of lottery funding back in November 2018 to say, you've got a great idea, you want to engage in this case British South Asian women in the love of cricket, and helping them inspire and drive forward the change of the next generation through their work with the children's programs. Like, oh my goodness, of course we want to be part of that sounds brilliant. So my journey, whilst not as direct perhaps, but actually still is about bringing that magic and helping unlock that change.
Yeah, it's so important. I know with many of my conversations, and we've all seen news stories of volunteering in communities, especially over the last 18 months, coming together, to see a project come together in this way is incredibly inspiring. And I'm sure, and it's probably a good segue into talking about the Dream Big program and kind of what it's about. So Shruti, if you could let the listeners know what Dream Big is and how it's really making that change.
So Dream Big Desi Women is, I'd like to say, a nationwide movement inspiring not only South Asian women, as many people in the community to come and dream big with us and lead our national programs. So where we've got city program execs across 7 key cities, which include London, Leicester, Birmingham, Nottingham, and Leeds, Bradford, Manchester. And what we set out to do, so as Jenny mentioned, the funding was allocated in 2018, and we formed together as a brand new team in 2019, the biggest year of cricket, you'd like to say, the Cricket World Cup, that test match where that Ben Stokes innings, and it was a huge opportunity for us to maximise on the love for the game from South Asian community, but also create opportunities where individuals felt from the South Asian background that cricket was a game for them. So what we set out to do was introduce our national programs, so All Stars and Dynamo's Cricket Now, into community in inner city. So we challenged the perception that you needed a big green field to play cricket. And what we did was take cricket to faith centres, community centres, anywhere where there was a safe space to play. We basically stood up cricket there, which was amazing. And some exciting, I guess, updates and news for your listeners. I think even Jenny's not heard this, so this is great, hot off the
amazing.
So in year one, we recruited 549 South Asian females. Despite the pandemic and everything that's happened in the past 18 months, we're currently at 780. So that's a huge uplift, despite cricket not happening. And if you think about the cities that I've just mentioned, COVID cases were really high, but we've come back and we've seen cricket's force as a power of good to bring these communities back, get active, get fit, and also make them feel part of the community. And I'd also like to highlight that, I guess, the project is all built by these incredible ambassadors of our program. Like this whole program, Dream Big, it came from the feedback we got from these South Asian women. They told us they wanted something inspirational and aspirational. We made it for them. Everything in the project has been built from bottom up. This project belongs to them. It's their identity that they associate cricket with. So for me to play a little part in that, I'm super delighted and super lucky.
I think it was a little bit more than a little part. I think you're being modest there. But again, it's an incredible story. And Jenny, I suppose, kind of seeing this coming from kind of almost being just an idea to fruition to kind of where it is probably vindication of kind of Sport England being involved, I imagine.
Absolutely. I couldn't put it better. And in fact, as you probably know, that in sport there are fairly kind of established bodies, and actually sometimes it's quite hard to change that mindset or like I say, kind of look and see who's not in the room, and having someone as fundamental and as high profile as cricket to show that actually you can do it in a school hall, you can do it in a mosque or a gurdwara or a temple, you can do it in different places and engage in different ways. But also what I've been really pleased with is that as well as the ECB doing this for themselves and for their game, Shruti and her team have made a huge effort to share that best practice and share that learning across cricket. So actually we know through inclusion is if you help people feel part of it and feel ownership of it, that actually it benefits everyone. I'm incredibly fortunate. I take my kid along to the All Stars and the Dynamos, and the way they engage me as a parent volunteer and get me involved off the sideline actually comes from the learnings that I'm seeing Shruti share. Likewise, and I'm sure we'll come on to it a bit later, that actually how other sports have adapted through the pandemic. Taking training qualifications online, for example, suddenly makes it far more accessible to a huge number more of people, whether that's more women taking coaching qualifications or the like. So actually, there's learning here to show that actually the sports sector is able to adapt, is able to respond, and actually does sport in the way that people want to do sport and physical activity. It's fun, it's connected.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's about bringing that enjoyment through, and I suppose allowing people to do it kind of on their terms when they need to, being kind of more proactive rather than reactive is always a line I'd like to throw in there. So it's absolutely along the right lines, and I guess, Shruti, there's probably a big kind of part of this which is being managed or kind of produced by the volunteers to kind of stepping up and helping with the programs and areas like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So our national program, so All Stars, is an initiative for 5 to 8 year olds, and Dynamos Cricket is an initiative for 8 to 11 year olds. So when we set up these programs, it's about getting these volunteers or these Dream Big ambassadors in this case to actually help us run these programs and ensure the kids have a fun time. And it's basically provided a great experience of cricket, but also without all the added challenges, like you need to be a qualified coach, you need all these badges and stuff to actually lead an activity. We empower the volunteers and ambassadors to have all the skills, all the training, but also the biggest thing is that support network around them. To feel it's not just them, to make a difference in their community and make that lasting impact, not only on themselves, but also the children. And in this case, growing a lifelong passion of cricket or for cricket. So yeah, it's and as Jenny's heard it quite a bit, we've got a team mantra which is about changing the world a little bit, and that's why, referring to my little phrase, I genuinely believe that the volunteers, the ambassadors, the team, it's all about the little changes that have helped us change the world a little bit.
Absolutely. And Jenny, I guess obviously with all your experience and all the sports you've seen, the crucial part that volunteers play in programs like this, I mean, it's not really to be underestimated, is it?
Absolutely not. So even last year, the year that we've had, over 10 million people in England gave up their time to help sport and physical activity happen. And that is huge. Sport and physical activity is one of the largest sectors that people volunteer in. And actually, the roles are everything and anything. So if any of your listeners don't currently volunteer and would like to help their local community and kind of make that kind of magic happen, there's a huge range of roles, everything from what you probably immediately jump to as Shruti's reference. You always think, oh, do I need to be a coach, do I need to be that? But you could be absolutely everything from helping in the back office, helping with social media, helping be the volunteer coordinator in the world, and they're absolutely everything. Our most recent Active Live survey has shown that actually there's a huge range of people who do it, from the week in, week out fantastic stalwarts that help make sport happen, through to the ad hoc monthly, I'd probably fit in that column, right the way through to the kind of event day one-off volunteering, which you yourself, Philip, have referenced. So actually there's a whole spectrum of brilliant ways people can engage. And if you even just start thinking about the variety of sports, I had the pleasure of chatting to a lady in the North Kennington Community Centre this week, and she was telling me about their online hula classes for kids and teenagers, which was just epic. It's brilliant. But that is also it. It's about finding your space in that and making that magic happen.
Yeah, online hula classes. Who'd have thought we'd be hearing about that, 18, 24 months ago? But a fantastic initiative, allowing people to get active in their homes and areas like that. And probably, Jenny, just to push on that point, how have you seen volunteering change over the last 12 to 18 months? Obviously, the big story is always the pandemic, but actually even before that, did you see any changes in kind of how not only volunteering was happening, but how organizations were approaching the way they looked at volunteers or how volunteers supported their programs?
Yes, absolutely. I think in answer to your question, Philip, the first response for me would almost be technology, which I appreciate is where yours and I's interests cross over. Actually, the digital explosion, which had been there and had been underlying, has come to the fore in the last 18 months. Alongside all the challenges, there have been fantastic innovations. And innovations don't need to be high tech. They could actually be something like putting AGMs online, annual general meetings of a local club, or a lot more technologies there to even easily divvy up roles. You actually have certain platforms that can help you do that, but equally you could do it on a WhatsApp group. So actually this idea of breaking down roles is actually changing the structure of how you can help volunteer in sport. So actually being a treasurer or something that is a defined role previously, there's loads of different ways to do that. And I guess against the backdrop, we also need to talk about the amazingness that sport and community groups have done to step up to help their communities. We've seen sports clubs transform into food banks to do food deliveries to, we have great partners in This Mum Runs, and they did some fantastic prescription pick up and drop offs through their running network. The likes of Good Gym, there has been a load of sports and community groups step up and step into that space where their community has needed them. And at the same time, created usually through technology, those online connections to help their players, their members, their volunteers feel connected, because mental health has really come to the fore. So whether you've got the likes of Flyers Hockey Club who have done online challenges each week, through to, I was honoured to be part of the LTA, the Tennis Volunteer Awards panel, and hearing the different ways that particularly young people have helped their peers through setting challenges, catch-ups, skills tests, like you say, everything in your front room. And it has unlocked a whole load of creativity. So whilst this last year has been really hard, so many of our volunteers have had to step back to protect themselves and protect their families, there has also been a load of creativity and innovation, particularly driven by digital and technology, that has helped that connection when we couldn't meet in person.
Absolutely. I think back in kind of March, April this year, I think we were all in our front rooms attempting to do the Joe Wicks for however many days or weeks we could. And I know my son was very much dragging me off the chair to do it. So I think it worked. And exactly, it was technology, which was the kind of aid of that as well. So Shruti, have you seen kind of similar within kind of your role within the ECB and the Dream Big program in terms of that change when it comes to volunteering and digital and technology?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's accelerated thinking around, I guess, making training available online or at your fingertips. I think Jenny's hit the nail on the head and covers all the trends that we've seen. One of the things that we've definitely, I guess, seen as well is around how do we support those groups who don't have access to this technology as to their fingertips. So be it like having access to internet or having a laptop to do various training. So we've looked at various innovative ways to ensure that the training that we deliver is suitable to do on your phone, or it's suitable to do in a group environment if you don't have access to certain means. So whether it is getting sent home a workbook because you don't have a printer, for example, we've taken a lot of different and little changes that we've made to make sure that everyone in our network feels a part of the project and there's no barrier that's come in the way of that. And it's been interesting. It's been a great learning, but I also think, as Jenny's mentioned, that it's brought this community together. It's allowed, especially the cricket clubs, thinking broader than the Dream Big program, think about volunteering as a whole in cricket. We've utilised some of these first class county grounds, some of the clubs, to be potential vaccination centres, to help become food banks. And I think that feeling about being a part of community and making that difference, it's continued and it will continue because people like that collective feeling. People like to be a part of a group. So I'm really excited to see when things are back up and running, how these relationships continue, how cricket clubs play their part in connecting to the community, and how we continue growing the game through other means and not just on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of pick up a couple of amazing points you've made there, and to kind of probe it a little bit, I guess, probably not the right word, but anyway, we'll go with that. How has you seen your own personal internal role when it comes to kind of managing these volunteers and managing these processes, as you've mentioned? So, looking at the workbooks, making sure you get the information about what people need. How have you seen that change, or is there anything in particular that you've done that has kind of allowed you to, cater to people's needs much quicker than maybe previously before?
I think despite the pandemic, I think what we set out to do in 2019 was make this a program that was built by the volunteers. So we always had a 360 feedback loop. We always had relationships with the volunteers, and we ensured that everyone was heard. So regardless whether it was positive, negative, or unbiased feedback, we always took it and we evolved. And to this day, me or the team, we always get emails on feedback, good or bad. I think what's changed is probably the streams that they communicate with us. So as Jenny's mentioned around WhatsApp, like that's probably become even more. Like we used to use WhatsApp because we knew they, again, creating that group. I think I'm a part of so many WhatsApp groups. It's unreal. I'm like, I do read my messages, but I think I've got over 100 unread right now, and I'm just like, oh my god.
Wow.
So I'm working through that on my leave. But I think it's just we've always had this open door policy at the England Wales Cricket Board, so not just my team but wider, and that's the ethos that we've looked to carry on into the wider volunteer action plan and strategy that we are hoping to launch in the near future. And as I mentioned, because this program has been built by volunteers, it's been easy for us to pivot and change should we need to. What the team did throughout, I guess, the past 18 months was they did check-in calls. So as Jenny's already alluded to, mental health was a huge, a huge subject that was brought to the fore. But if you think about the South Asian community that we were working with, mental health still has a stigma around it. So one of the things that we did in 2019 was we trained over 100 mental health first aiders as a further development in the program. And it was so interesting because these 100 individuals throughout the pandemic stepped up to be ambassadors in their community and be that sounding board, and just basically set up a circle group for people to come in and have a chat, to see different faces. So we've definitely been a champion for change, especially in the volunteers that we've engaged to be more proactive to talk about mental health, which has been really good. And we will continue to have these relationships to change and pivot how we move forward and how this Dream Big project evolves as well. So I'm really excited. I'm excited by a lot of things, but
yeah. Absolutely, and I think we've all had our ups and downs, haven't we, with the way the pandemic has been in terms of how things go. So to almost see that you had been thinking about that even before it hit was, might actually have to be asking you for the lottery numbers later, because obviously you saw a lot of things come in and things. But it's an absolutely fantastic initiative and shows it goes beyond just that volunteering of, I'm helping out on an event day. It's actually more of a wider ranging support for a volunteer, for a member of the community, which this is all about. So Jenny, I'll move on to you. And I guess, you've worked with a number of sporting federations, organizations, clubs in your role. What are the best things that you've seen when it comes to kind of managing, supporting, recruiting, engaging volunteers, and almost what do you think is the next step in terms of where we could go to almost, make volunteering even easier for people?
That is an excellent question. And that is the question at the heart of my role. As I mentioned earlier, 10 million people give their time to sport and physical activity. And within that, there is 10 million individuals. That is the brilliant thing about volunteering. It is diverse as those individuals. So the challenge is, how do you create that personal connection? How do you understand your volunteer? What are their motivations? How can you support them? And actually, how can they contribute through their skills, through their life experience, through their passion, and through their time, obviously. But as you've come and mentioned, as an organisation, as a federation, or as a national governing body, or an active partnership, or a charity, how do you support your volunteers when you have tens, hundreds, or in Shruti's case, thousands of them, and yet still make it feel personal? And that is the challenge, and that is the connection. And technologies really help with that, but also real clarity of the value of volunteers to your organisation. You don't just count them as numbers of hours given. You really understand the impact that they bring. And in our work and through our volunteering investment funds, we've been able to show that actually the experience the volunteer has is so important, because if they have a better experience and they enjoy their time, first of all, really simply, they're more likely to come back, but also they're far more likely then to gain the benefits that we know that volunteering can bring, whether that's individual development, so greater skills, greater confidence, greater friendships, mental health, mental well-being, really importantly and really strongly comes through, but also then community development. And there's that community connection and community trust. And we've seen across the board, those benefits volunteers have had an uptick of those benefits by having a positive volunteer experience. And then if we take another step forward and think about the participant who we're helping to get active and helping for them to enjoy that programme, actually, that is where the unique added value of volunteering. Someone is giving up their time to help me do, couch to 5K, running, local running group, local tennis, local online hula class, whatever it is. There's a real value to having a volunteer, particularly as Shruti's talked through, for someone like me, someone who understands me and understands where I've come from and understands the barriers I'm facing in helping me get active and get moving. So I think, as your question alluded to, there is a change coming. There has been. Volunteering is constantly evolving, but how we think about what qualifications you need, what skills, importantly, how we think about safeguarding, keeping our volunteers and our participants safe, how we think about how we create that diversity and that vibrancy so that we have new ideas, we have difference of thought, we have different life experiences coming in, so that actually your hula class can sit alongside your cricket, because actually there's nothing to say I can't enjoy both. Probably not at the same time. We're not yet there yet, but but actually we are stronger by the greater choice and the greater connections at the local level. So Sport England is working with partners who share our vision for more people being physically active, but also with partners who are looking to understand how they can modernise and bring volunteering and create those volunteering experiences forward.
Absolutely. I think some of the things you mentioned resonate so much with me in terms of, this ability to not only support volunteers and not only look at them as you so eloquently put it, as just hours given. Actually, it's the whole entire benefit of it. And also what also resonates with me is obviously the people who are kind of managing or handling these volunteers, how much their role has completely changed. Because like you say, if you're managing 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 volunteers, without the use of technology, how do you create that personal interaction with them? How do you create those feedback loops, as you mentioned, Shruti? How do you, make sure that we are giving them the most support or showcasing what skills they have gained, so that when they go to a new role or they've just come out of university, these can be used alongside the physical aspects. And I don't know, Shruti, if there's anything that you might want to add from your end.
So I guess Jenny's covered it all and has been super clear. So nothing to add on the specific points. Just one little point from my side is basically, how do we define volunteering and how do we value the little contributions? Because when you think about the individual volunteer journey, I think over 90% of our volunteers don't even see it as volunteering. They see it more of a making a difference and helping the community to enjoy, be it cricket in this case. So I think there's a piece of work around like what is volunteering and how do organizations value the little contributions that this amazing network make to cricket and all other sports as well.
It's so true. It's completely, that new definition of where it's come from. I completely agree with that. And I think, the more I think organizations, charities, whoever you may be, think about it, I think the better experience it has for us all. And as someone who's relatively new to volunteering, I'm already trying to plan when's the next event I'm going to, what's the next thing I'm doing. So, I want to be one of those people where we can kind of see this change happen, because selfishly, I want to do more volunteering. So it's a win-win for everyone, I think. Right, I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. So it's more about kind of your stories or anything that you've seen, particularly with your interaction with volunteering and how you've seen. So, are there any stories that you have, and it could be positive, it could be negative, that really stick out in your mind in your of kind of what volunteering stands to do to improve? Maybe I can start with you, Jenny.
Thanks, Phil. My volunteering stories. Funny enough, my immediate reaction always goes to when I used to run my own volunteers. It's been many years now, and I certainly didn't have favourites, but I had a group of the older women who I absolutely loved, mainly because they also cooked for me. But the likes of Gladys and Nancy and Catherine O'Neill, or when we do kind of fundraising dinners, the unspoken but definitely tension of the battle between whose rice is better, whether it's Edith's or Agatha's. Just to say, ladies, both your rice is amazing. But that was it. It was almost, I think, more about the personal connections and the love and that emotive response. And then you kind of almost take a step up to my role at the moment, where we work with partners and then their volunteers. So I'm very much arm's length, several steps away, which is perhaps the bit I don't quite like as much about my current role. But I'm really honoured to be often asked to be part of kind of panels for Volunteer of the Year awards. So recently with tennis, the LTA, or with England Golf. And that is so humbling to hear and understand how they recognise those people who have given a significant contribution. But I guess at the other end of the scale, what really gets me excited is you don't need to have given a huge amount of time. You don't need to have been a volunteer for many years. You don't need to have kind of done significant, massive kind of set pieces, although I'm incredibly grateful for those that do. But actually, it's those little bits. It's those small ideas, or the let's just get together. So I'm currently part of a small team helping set up a junior park run locally in Mitcham, and big thanks to Councillor Linda Kirby and Jazz from Parkrun. But actually, it's just those little things of just helping do a bit and spark saying we can do this. And I know when it happens, it will be amazing. It will blow my mind to see all those kids having a great time. So I have loads of positive stories. I probably also have a load of negative ones, but I won't. But actually, I don't want people to listen and think I have to commit a huge amount, or I have to be this person for the rest of my life. Actually, dipping in and out of volunteering and where your energies take you is really important, because volunteering doesn't happen in a silo. Your life happens, and it's just what takes it. So I want everyone to think that they can contribute.
I couldn't agree more. I think, the conversations that I've certainly been having has been around how volunteering is, you've got a spare afternoon because the kids have gone to their grandparents, or you've got an afternoon where you've got annual leave and you fancy giving a bit of your time to something. I think that element of volunteering is something we're seeing which is going to change, and I think having that flexibility of fitting around your life rather than being I have to volunteer every Tuesday between 3 and 5 is certainly something I can see is changing at the moment, and I think it will change as we go on as well. So yeah, completely agree with that. Shruti, any stories from you? I'm sure you must have quite a few.
I do have quite a few, and just one more to add to Jenny's positive one. Obviously, we met each other through this great volunteering initiative.
Of course.
But no, I think the two that definitely stand out to me is when we started in 2019. We engaged a couple of volunteers, well, quite a few volunteers in 2019, but two that really strike me is two of them have actually now secured full-time employment at the England and Wales Cricket Board, and they're a part of the team. They're helping us deliver Dream Big, and also another volunteering initiative that we're driving forward. So little did they know that by making a difference through our All-Stars and national programs, that their whole career life would change. So one of them was a full-time PT and basically found the perfect opportunity with the England and Wales Cricket Board. Another one literally fresh out of university, graduated, never in a million years thought she'd have a job in sports, but was passionate about making a difference to women's lives. And she's now in our team. So as Jenny's alluded to, you never know where this will take you. Volunteering, things happen. You make friends, you make lifelong friends, you become part of community groups, and things stand out. But there are two that I guess immediately come to mind, but there's so many, throughout the pandemic, seeing a number of volunteers basically, because they saw the difference from taking part in Dream Big, they actually thought and felt confident enough to step up in the community by creating food banks, doing check-in calls for the elderly, and helping their community throughout the past 18 months. So I could literally list and reel off a whole load of stories that I've seen that happen. And if any listeners listening and I've forgot any, I apologize, but there are so many that I think would be here for the whole next week if I
I was gonna say you could probably write a novel with some of the stories that you've probably seen, and I'm sure it'd be a really enthralling read as well. But it's obviously great to see, kind of how these things. And it's always been my focus on volunteering, having been involved for maybe 2 years in the arena of some of the experiences that I've seen. I did in my literally one volunteering, and some of the people I met it was so eye-opening. I met someone who was literally lived round the corner from me, who was 40 years older than me, and was telling me about the school I went to way before I was born. And it's just those kind of little connections, which I think, I'm certainly passionate about getting that experience from more people, but basically giving them the ability to volunteer as and when they want to go, right, I want to meet people, I want to kind of get more involved, especially as we come out of the pandemic as well.
Philip, if it's okay for me to jump in, I do realise that both Shruti and I sidestepped neatly your ask about negative stories and negative experiences, because obviously we love volunteering and we always want to champion it. But almost coming back to Shruti's earlier point about a feedback loop, that if someone has not had a positive experience volunteering, it is really important to listen and to understand that, and then think about what it is. So just as we can name hundreds of positive stories, we probably can name similar of someone who's tried and hasn't had the experience they thought they would. And Sport England's done some research in recent years, and actually we found that those who perhaps are underrepresented in sports volunteering to start with, who are more likely to have a less positive experience. And we need to hear that, and we need to understand that. And actually that's why we then work with partners such as the ECB to think about, well, who is not feeling included, or what is it around the volunteer kit, which the ECB have been fantastic about expanding the range of just, the volunteer shirts and how they fit and how they feel, so that everyone feels welcomed. So we need to, as a sector, and certainly myself in my role, I need to constantly almost hear those experiences, understand those barriers, and actually then start thinking about, well, what's the things immediately that we can help change, but what are the systemic things? How can we make sure that more people feel the opportunities are for them? How can we break down roles? How can we help organisations think strategically around their volunteers and the value of them? So I didn't want you to think that Shruti and I had just done a little sideways step there for you, or not think it doesn't exist, because it does exist, and it's really important that we help people tell us when it hasn't worked.
Absolutely, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's always one of these. Look, volunteering has always been about positive experiences and positive outcomes for those involved and those that it's creating an experience for. But it's impossible to get it right every time. So I guess, Shruti, my next question following on from that is kind of in this feedback loop that you've obviously established. Kind of how do you manage the data? How do you analyze the data, and how do you utilize it to kind of improve the volunteering program going forward?
As Jenny's already mentioned, I think there's a case of listening and actually sharing that wider beyond myself. So as Jenny's mentioned, there has been multiple occasions where I've had feedback directly to myself, or even my boss, or even the team. And the one thing that that I've definitely learned is you can't just keep it to yourself. You've got to probably shout a bit louder about that feedback than you would of a positive story. So whenever we get that feedback, I will always ensure that it's communicated to the team, but also in the wider organization, because that's how you learn and that's how you ensure your program is better. And some of the feedback we had initially was around the timing of training. It's too much. As Jenny's mentioned, the kit isn't suitable because sports clothing's normally like fitted and tight. So we took all that feedback on, and I think there's a bit of showing that one of the things we like to do is like a you said, we did, or showcasing that we are listening. We often, what I've experienced in the past, and one of the things that we've looked at changing here at the ECB is when someone gives you feedback, we often take on the board. We often do so many things internally, but we never get back to the volunteer to tell them what we've done. And one of the things that we've definitely ensured that we've done is whether or not that volunteer continues with us, we will always feedback to say, look, based on your feedback, we have done X, Y, Z, and appreciate it's not been the best journey for you, but we will find means to make it better. And sometimes you've got to accept it that this volunteer may not continue with you, but it's probably the volunteers are the biggest impact in your project. So I think
absolutely.
So I think it's about, like, when you do get feedback, it's about you have a responsibility to share it, but also like beyond your teams, like in the organization. And I'm pretty sure Jenny can vouch for it, but like when things haven't gone right for us, we've definitely been open and honest about this isn't working, or we've struggled with like enrolling volunteers because the systems are just too complicated, or like setting up programs because they've got to register. So we've definitely always had that open feedback, and where there's a lot of minds working to solve a solution, as they say, right? A problem shared is a problem halved. That's what we try to do, because I would say that feedback has probably shaped our project more than them stories that I love to shout about and put a positive spin on.
Absolutely. The learnings just make things better, right? And we just get to a place where volunteers have a program that's been shaped by them, that fits them and does all these amazing things for them, and probably maybe trying to put a bit more of a positive spin on this. So I suppose there's probably that same element when it comes to kind of reward and recognition as well. So recognizing the amazing jobs that these volunteers are doing, kind of continuing to tell them that you're completely valued here, and without you this is impossible. I imagine there's a lot you do around that as well, Shruti.
Yeah, definitely. And I think often we feel that like doing a big award ceremony or recognize them on media or something like that is how volunteers want to be recognized. But in a recent survey that we did at the England and Wales Cricket Board was 76% of our volunteer base just wanted a simple thank you. And often we forget them simple gestures that value the contributions of what individuals are making to the game. So one of the things that we're really excited and that we're working on in the background, so watch this space, in the next couple of months and in the next year or so, you will see how the learnings we've had from the Dream Big project to thank our volunteers has basically spread across wider into the game and across the volunteers. We're going to have a big focus around how can we reach more volunteers in a way that's meaningful to them, because often like giving out merchandise or tickets to a game might not be the reason a volunteer volunteers. So it's really understanding the motivations of why people are volunteering and wanting to take part. So we've done a lot of work in understanding the motivations, understanding the demographics of volunteers in the game and how we can make their experience better, because word of mouth is, I guess, the strongest marketing tool we will have. So if we ensure an experience is good from a reward and recognized point of view, we know they will go on and tell their friends to take part and show that. I'm very biased in this case, but cricket's a great place to volunteer, as well as other sports as well.
Other sports are available, but no, this is your podcast and is about you, and for sure the reward and recognition side of things, it sounds like you've made a real effort to kind of get that right. Jenny, anything to add? Anything that you've seen to add on to Shruti's points?
I guess for those listening in, if you're a volunteer manager and you're thinking this all sounds great, but where do I start and what do I do? We've spoken about how you understand your volunteers, and your volunteers are as diverse as they are. They are individuals, as Shruti's talked about, understanding motivations and having a feedback loop, thinking about how you can reward and recognise and further develop your volunteers, and actually setting up simple things like an annual volunteer survey or a particular welcome or induction process. They don't need to be overly onerous, but actually what you do with that data and actually how you distill it as insight is really important, and how you then bring alongside the kind of more anecdotal stuff or the more qualitative work. So I don't want people sitting and thinking, oh my goodness, this is a huge endeavour. Actually, start small, start thinking about what is the bits that you'd like to know, how you'd like to engage your volunteers. Sport England on our volunteering pages have a kind of a question bank for an annual volunteer survey. We draw down a lot of the national survey questions so that then you can kind of benchmark yourself against kind of volunteer satisfaction that a number of the national surveys do. So I don't want people to feel that it's too much, especially if you're a new volunteer manager or working for an organisation that particularly doesn't have a huge amount of resource. Obviously, I'm sure, Philip, that you will plug your own platform, but there are a number of platforms and technologies there to support volunteer managers. And actually, that is getting that process up and running, and almost that process not feeling heavy, not feeling like a process. That's what will then help you unlock kind of your volunteer kind of resources. So nothing in the specifics, but just to reassure people, there's some really easy steps you can take.
Absolutely. And I think with the adoption of technology, as we've alluded to a few times in this chat, it has to be about making your job easier. There's no point in putting things in place because, it's worked in another sport or you've heard it's worked somewhere else. I think it's such an important thing to shape it to your own individual program. So if you need something that's huge, that has loads of steps because you've got loads of different pathways, then great, that's being shaped for the right way. But like you say, if you're a new volunteer manager coming in and you're managing, 50, 100 volunteers and you just want something to send a quick email to allow people to choose what events they want to go into, it's definitely something that the platform needs to work for you. And that's always kind of, again, in the conversation we've had, it's always been about what do you need? What are the things that you need as a volunteer manager? What are the things your volunteers need? And let's build a program that, or let's put in place technology that works to tick those boxes. So I think it's a fantastic point on that. And I think it's a great place to wrap up the podcast. So really thank you for your time, Jenny and Shruti. It's been incredible to hear both your stories and your tips and your tricks and everything that you do for volunteering. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Philip. Thanks, Shruti.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Jenny. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
See you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Engaged Volunteer Podcast with Jenny Betteridge and Shruti Saujani. We hope you enjoyed it. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. Our podcast aims to highlight the ways in which organisations and individuals are engaging with their communities to connect them to events and causes they're passionate about, with new episodes released each Wednesday fortnight. The best way to support us is to click follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and to tell your friends about us. For our next episode, hosted by Shannon Gove, we're very lucky to be joined by Anne-Catherine Yen, Senior Volunteer Manager at FIFA. In this episode of the podcast, we get a rare glance at FIFA's impressive global volunteer management solution. Streamlining processes for administrators and volunteers alike, Anne-Catherine takes a deep dive into FIFA's unique programme and how they are striving for service excellence by delivering a consistent and connected experience for their volunteers. We hope to catch you there.